Hey, welcome back to the channel. Let's see, where did I leave off last time? So I did a few things since we were last together, and what I'm going to work on today is, like I mentioned before, it's time to get this section routed out and this piece added in, and then I'm going to go around and fill all the little gaps, like right there. If I find any voids, mix some epoxy with high saw and get those filled in. And I mean, I'm confident that everything is epoxy together, but there's no reason to leave those little cracks. Might as well fill them up. I worked on the engine here. I got the CHTs in, and I'm working on the EGTs. I've got the hole in the exhaust, so I'll get those, getting those ran to where they need to go. One of the things I came across that everybody told me on the Minimax, on the Half EW site on Facebook, everybody said that I needed to make sure I extend these Type K cables here. Make sure that I extend these with the same type of material rather than just use wire. I did end up with about a foot of wire, and so I ordered some what I thought was the same stuff, but the wire is so much smaller that it actually won't crimp. So I ran a test with it right here. You can see here just how small it is. I folded it over, put it in there, crimped it. It's just like, it works, but I'm just not confident in it, so I'm gonna have to order the right stuff and get that taken care of. So, but the good news is I finally figured out my so I was having trouble getting a zero reading on the oil pressure sender, and so I thought maybe it was the sender that I bought. So I got a VDO one and I put it in, and basically ended up in the same situation. It was reading 95 psi. So I want to show you the menu, and the other thing I needed to do is I needed to ground the case of it, because I'm using some sealant here going into the engine. I needed to ground the case of it to the engine ground, so that's right here. That was easy enough to solder that on the case, really simple. And I kept getting the same reading. It was really frustrating, but somebody on the Half EW site finally helped me out and told me to check the ohms, and sure enough, when I took the ohms reading on the sensor, it's actually higher than the range of the instrument. So flip this on real quick, just in case someone is using one of these and you're trying to figure it out. I'll just show you real quick. Like right now, you see the oil pressure is reading 0, which is good news. That means everything's working correctly finally. But what I had to do is I had to go in and program for that specific sender. And so you push this right here to get to your menus. So once you get to your menus, you just scroll over through all of these, and it's analog channel 2. So it's pressure, it's a resistive type, and I had to do user. The settings on that are either user, VDO. This is where I started because it's a VDO 5-bar. But because the ohms were different than what probably a typical VDO 5-bar is, it just wouldn't work. So so go back to user, and then you have to go to calibrate the sender. And what happens is this number right here, this ADC number right there, it's reading like 547, 548. I actually had to go through each of these points, 0 to 10, to 20, had to go through all these points, and I had to put in 547 in there. Once I did that, everything was as it should be. So I wasn't able to actually just set it to VDO 5 bar. I had to actually program it for that specific sender. And once I figured it out, well, the first step was probably the other sender I had in there would have worked fine. I just didn't have it grounded the way I have this one grounded. And if I would have had that one grounded, I probably would have been able to program it the same. So now I have a spare in the box. In case this one goes bad, I'll be able to deal with that. So, I'm gonna get the router out and route this out, and then we can jump over, add some pieces over there. And before I do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and go around, and I'm gonna kind of blow all the dust off everything so that I can get some epoxy in all the cracks. All right, so let's do it. All right, so I squared this corner off with the chisel right here, and now I just laid a piece of 16th ply in here, and that gave me I marked off my shape, this edge, and then this inside corner that's got to come out. So that's what I've got. Now I'll take this to the bandsaw, cut this out, sand it up, and then it'll be ready to epoxy in place. All right, I'll get that taken care of, and I'll be back. All right, so we got this fit now. So now I'm ready to finish kind of blowing all this off, and then we can get some epoxy mixed up and get some gaps filled, get this in place. I'll get the stapler out. Let's see, where did I leave that thing? It usually lives in this drawer. Yep, sure enough. When you've been fishing in and out of these drawers for as long as I have, for a couple of years, it's like you know exactly where things are. As long as you put them back where you usually do. Okay, so let's get rocking on this. right, so I found a little area where this may have gotten kind of hit in the move, but right along here there's a number of places where this has just ever so slightly pulled away. So I've got to come in here and put some epoxy and reclamp this. It just appears to have kind of popped itself up in just a few spots, but I'll go and check them all and make sure that everybody's good. These are all good down here. How many issues here? How many there? Maybe there is a little bit here. I just better check them all. Maybe I'll actually kind of peel away some of this epoxy on the edge of all of these here and then come back and verify that indeed they are good. So okay, which makes me think, I know I checked when I was putting the urethane on this one. I checked everywhere and there was absolutely nothing pulling away anywhere, so I know this one's good. But I'll take care of those, no big deal. Just get some epoxy fed up in there. It's warm enough where I know it'll flow, so I'll just have to kind of pry it apart a little bit, feed epoxy in there and get that back in place. So okay, I've got everything cleaned off, and now I'll go back and I'll mix up some epoxy with some high saw and kind of get all the little cracks that I see, not cracks but just little gaps between parts, and then yeah, then I'll get this trailing edge, get some clamps out, get this trailing edge taken care of, and then after that dries, then I'll be ready to flip it over, and we'll double check the other side. Once we get the other side kind of checked out, then we'll be able to urethane it. Okay, and my plan is to actually make some I'm going to kind of make some cradles that are going to hold the wing in an upright position, kind of like this, so that after I get it covered, I'll have some jigs that it can set in where my wife and I are going to do the rib stitching. So I was debating, it's not required. I'd like the experience for one thing. I know it's going to add time, maybe a touch of weight, but seeing the wing billow out there, the fabric in between the ribs billow, well, it'll just make me feel better to see it. And personally, I kind of like the look of it. So we're going to do it, and I'd considered only doing it on the top side. I think long time ago when I built my first Minimax, Andy Carmi, I think he rib stitched his only to the top side, and I didn't necessarily like maybe all that pressure on just the top rib, the top rib cap. So I think going all the way through with the stitch is much better. So that's what we're gonna do. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna get some epoxy mixed up, and I'll kind of get this taken care of, get that little L that I made put on, and then we'll see what's next. Okay. All right, let me talk just for a second about the method that I'm using here to get epoxy back underneath those. And actually what I think has happened is I think because of the reduction in humidity, I think the wood has just shrunk a little bit. And I think that's where I had excess epoxy on the edge. It's just pulled away a little bit. So I couldn't find any other locations where that's happened. That seems to be the only place. Maybe because of the grain structure of this, it was easier for that to shrink. Not sure, but anyway, getting it plenty of glue back in there and getting it sealed up is kind of primary. So Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm taking my epoxy and laying it on the edge here, just kind of giving it a little fillet. And then I'm taking some copper wire because I can flatten it, and I'm just pulling it underneath as far as it'll go. That way I'm assured that I'm getting some epoxy underneath. Just kind of raking it. And then putting a clamp on it. When I put the clamp on, I see some good squeeze out, which is what we want. So that's what I'm doing. All right, I'll finish doing these, then I'll check back in with you. Okay, so I got those all handled, and they're all clamped now, and I've got glue coming out where I want to see it coming out, so that's a good sign. And got this in place, so that's setting up now. And yeah, so that's going to be it for me for this video, and thanks for hanging out with me. You know I do appreciate it, and welcome to all the new subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, I invite you to hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so you don't miss any of my episodes. And hey, I'll catch you later.